Thanks, Judith. So I'm Jonathan Chaplin. I'm an equity analyst covering the telecommunications and cable sectors. And my firm is New Street Research. I have to apologize, as Judith said, I'm running to catch an inconvenient flight right after this, so I won't be around for the Q&A. But my contact details are at the end of the presentation, and Ellie has them. If you've got questions or want to discuss any of the materials or get your hands on the analysis, please feel free to contact me. So since I'm speaking first, I thought I would start by just laying out some of the groundwork in terms of numbers and projections for the pay TV business and the online video business today, and leave it to my far more eloquent co-panelists to tell you all about disruption and give you the really insightful thoughts on who the winners and losers are going to be. I'm going to make one fairly controversial prognostication at the end of the presentation, which is that the real losers from online video are going to be the traditional media companies, and that they stand to lose in a really big way. I don't really have any right to make that prognostication since I'm a telecom analyst, so you might cynically suspect that that's my view, because I don't really want it to affect any of the companies I cover. I want it to be somebody else's problem, which might in fact be the case. So to lay things out, the pay TV market peaked in 2008 at 86% penetration, which was about a year after Netflix launched the first really successful online video business. This is looking at it from the other side, from the other perspective. So the line here is non-pay TV households, and it's growing at an accelerating rate. So in the 5 years from 2008 to 2013, non-pay TV households increased by 2 million. In the 3 years subsequently, 2.5 years subsequently, it's increased by 5 million. And in just the last quarter alone, it increased by 1.4 million. So the sort of the pace of acceleration here is pretty stunning. The losses have really been borne by the satellite TV providers, the DBS companies. After years of taking share in the pay TV market at a dizzying pace, they've been losing subscribers, and cable TV companies, after losing share for 15 years, have seen subscribers basically stabilize. And the reason for that is really broadband. As the differentiation between pay TV products has really collapsed, households are now more inclined to take pay TV from whoever they take broadband from. Broadband subscribers for the cable companies eclipsed pay TV subscribers back in the middle of 2014. And since then, there's been a pull-through effect. As people take broadband from their cable company, they're more inclined to take pay TV. Looking forward over the course of the next 4.5 years, we think the market's going to decline by another 10 million, the pay TV market, that is. And the trends will probably stay pretty much the same. All the losses will be borne by the satellite TV companies, and the cable companies will be pretty stable in that environment. What if we're wrong about who loses and who wins from a subscriber perspective? We don't think it really matters from the perspective of the cable TV companies, because they don't really make any money in the pay TV business. Pay TV is really a stocking stuffer. They get all of their value from the broadband business. And this slide kind of exemplifies it. Out of $82 a month that households pay for pay TV, the companies generate about $10 in free cash flow per subscriber. If you drop your pay TV service, your broadband bill goes up by almost $10. So basically, whatever they lose when you cut the cord, they make up from you on a high broadband bill. So this is the point where we sort of switch to focus on media companies. And what we'll posit here is that what's really driven this shift to over-the-top content or online video distribution is the fact that the media companies have been overcharging for their product for the last 10 years. Subscribers are sick of it, and that's going to put a lot of value at stake. So what we see here is, over the course of the last 10 years, pay TV ARPU, the price that households pay for pay TV service, is increased 50%, while broadband, the price they pay for broadband has remained relatively flat. The utility they derive from the product has gone in the opposite direction. So after years of growth, the hours spent watching pay TV has started to decline. So when you look at the price paid per hour consumed, it's really taking off. Prices are going up, hours consumed going down. So you see a real acceleration in the cost per hour consumed. All of this value, this rising, the rising amount that households are paying is going not to the pay TV companies, but to the content companies, the big media companies. So the top line is the price paid per hour consumed that the pay TV companies collect. The bottom lighter line is what those companies pay out to the media companies, and that line's rising at a faster rate. If you look at the gross margin that pay TV companies get from content, it's in free fall. Broadband has been on exactly the opposite trajectory. So this is a different measure. It's gigabytes consumed, and it's exploded over the course of the last decade. While ARPU's remained relatively flat, which means the price paid per unit consumed has completely collapsed. If we were to utility adjust the two products, basically what would happen is pay TV ARPU would halve, broadband ARPU would double, and that would describe sort of a $56 billion a year transfer in value from pay TV companies to broadband companies. And that's more or less the framework you can adopt for thinking about winners and losers in this business. As more content moves over the top, we think the real winners are going to be broadband providers, and the real losers are going to be the traditional media companies that have been overpaid for their content for the last few years. This is looking at it from a slightly different perspective, as pay TV drives, video content drives very significant growth on networks, both wireline and wireless. We think the winners are going to be the infrastructure providers that support that growth, and it's the broadband providers that we've already spoken about, the owners of spectrum, which is a critical input for consumption of traffic on wireless networks, towers, exactly the same stories, and then the data centers as well. And that's it from me. Thanks. Cool, thanks.
Do you have time for questions or not?
I can take some questions now if anybody's interested, or
Okay.
if you want to go right on to the next speaker.
No, let's do some quick questions while Jonathan is here. How much time do you have for that?
Like 10 minutes?
Okay.
Whatever. I don't want to go into other people's speaking time. So.
Okay. Are there any questions for, yes, Ellie?
If indeed the cable companies start making any money on content, why don't they become open platforms?
So some of them are. If you look at what some of the smaller cable companies are doing, like Cable One, they're firing all of their pay TV subscribers, and they're turning themselves gradually into broadband companies. So basically an open platform. GCI up in Alaska is doing the same thing. They really don't want you to buy content from them. They'll send a truck to your house with an Apple TV or an Amazon dongle, or a Roku box, and plug in whatever service you want. All they want to do is provide you with broadband. The difference between the small guys and the big guys is they pay a lot more for content because they've got smaller scale, less scale. And so that $10 in free cash flow that Charter generates is negative for guys like GCI and Cable One. And so they've been forced to sort of manage a transition in their business model today. As long as they're making $10 in free cash flow, the current setup is okay, Ellie. But as that $10 goes to zero, I think their business model is going to change as well.
So in terms of the cost structure, right, on the programming side, what percentage of that is the sort of the cable versus the retrans, and how does retrans cost play into that to become a non-cable operator or pure broadband to be able to exit that? Have you looked at?
So I don't know off the top of my head what the composition of the sort of the $50 or $45 of content costs are between retrans and straight content. But as a broadband provider, I don't think they're going to pay any of it.
No, they pay none, but also that within the definition of cable operator,
right?
In terms of retrans and then getting out from under. That's why I was just curious what portion of that was and whether the retrans piece was growing or not. Maybe somebody else knows that.
Yeah, Craig might know. But the
Retrans is about 10% of programming costs, something like that. But but there's no real distinction between retrans and and a cable network economically anymore, right? You're just paying an affiliate fee for a network.
Your figures have been international ones, or because I have this difference between Europe and the US, which is quite significant in the kind of would you underline that?
So these are just U.S. ones, and you're right.
Just
that
US ones. Okay.
the trends in Europe are very different, with
Very
really interesting implications from an investment perspective. So, cable companies tend to trade at much higher multiples in Europe because sort of the mix of revenue they generate from pay TV and broadband is already flipped.
Yeah.
And investors in Europe tend to think of cable companies as infrastructure providers or broadband companies today.
Okay.
And it makes a huge difference to how they're valued.
And last one, what do you think about the scenario that you have premium content exclusive bundled with infrastructure? Is that an option for somebody? Or sports content, premium?
So we see companies playing around with models like that, both here to some extent, but really in Europe. And I'm not sure why. I think particularly in the US, where the cable companies have a structural competitive advantage in broadband, in 84% of the country, they've really got an effective monopoly. It's a product with incredible barriers to entry, very high incremental margins. They don't need to do anything to increase the value of that. They don't need to bundle content with that product to increase the value of that product. Essentially, given how fragmented the content delivery business is, a content delivery company is going to have a hard time making any money out of that product. I think of it as the content delivery component, the pay TV component of a cable business being like a supermarket. They're taking other people's products and aggregating it together in a convenient place. Supermarkets make sort of 7 or 8% net income margins, and are pretty low value businesses. Maybe there's a Walmart that comes along and generates a 12% net income margin, but it's the economics of that business are incredibly different to the broadband business.
Okay. Okay,
Cool.
Stop it there and let
Thanks,
you take
guys.
five. Thank you so much.